Manchester City are top of the English Premier League after a 2-0 win over Everton. Obviously, Arsenal and Liverpool still to play. But to look at that and to recap the other games in the 3 p.m. kickoffs in England, it's Mark Donaldson and Stevie Nichols. Strange one, this one, Stevie. I thought Everton were really good in the first half, just didn't have their shooting boots on. And then Haaland, who'd done nothing, came alive, could have had 4, got 2, and City got 3 points. What kind of game was this for you?
To be honest, it's a little pedestrian watching Man City these days, to be honest with you. I actually enjoyed Everton more in the first half than I did Manchester City. You know, Everton had 2 great chances. Beto and Ndiaye. You know, Beto with a sliding opportunity that he couldn't quite get on the end of a nice ball across. And then Ndiaye with some good footwork, dribbling past a couple of City defenders in the box. And goalkeeper had to make a big save. You know, Manchester City, in terms of scoring goals, yes, we know Haaland's going to always score goals, but the problem for City is who else is going to contribute in terms of putting the ball in the back of the net? Because in the first half, they did have some chances, City. But unfortunately, the likes of Doku on one side, they get opportunities and they can't finish. So if Haaland gets injured, Haaland gets suspended, if Haaland loses form, which the last one seems pretty impossible, but if something happens to Haaland, where are Manchester City's goals coming from? So yeah, that it's great that he's scoring for them. It's great that they're top of the league. But you can't surely go through a Premier League season relying on one guy when it comes to putting the ball in the net. And then if you add the vulnerability that they absolutely have defensively, you wonder, can they stay at the top of the league? I'm not so sure.
Is there a noticeable change or difference to the way that City are playing this season?
I think it's just the pace of play that's it's kind of, over the last couple of seasons, it seemed to have slowed down. You know, when they get past the halfway line, it seems as though they absolutely wait till the opposition get back into a defensive unit and then they start knocking it around. You know, and then when they do start knocking it around, it's not with any real pace. And a lot of the time it seems as though it's just to keep the ball. It's not. You know, generally when you're knocking the ball around, what you're doing is you're keeping an eye on the defenders. You're looking for somebody to fall asleep, for somebody to get out of position, and then bang, you take advantage of that. Now, City used to do that, but they used to do it at pace. Whenever that opportunity arose, it was either a quick pass and somebody was through, or it was little 1-2s. That seems to have disappeared for City. That's the disappointing thing. City used to be so clinical to watch, so good to watch. They were so calculated, but with pace. But that seems to have gone. And I mean, I'm going to keep coming back to the same thing. What do they do if something happens to Haaland? I just don't know where the goals are coming from.
You could argue they're just another team that'll be challenging maybe for a top 4 spot without Haaland. But with him, I mean, they're top right now. Let's look at some of his stats. Goals in 11 consecutive games for club and country. And his second goal today took him to 23 for club and country combined. He scored with his first touch in the second half, and he scored with his second touch in the second half. As a former international defender yourself, how would you and your teammates go about trying to stop Erling Haaland?
Well, either the dark arts or numbers. I mean, those are the only 2 things you can do. And in terms of his finishing, you know, when somebody's finishing so clinically with 1 touch as much as he does, or at a maximum 2 touches, that means that if he gets a sniff, you really don't have a lot of time to recover. And generally, defenders don't recover because he's so quick and so clinical. You know, he had a couple of chances towards the end of the game. As you said, he could have had 3 or 4. And it's interesting that he did have 2 or 3 or 4 touches on that occasion. Well, forget the 2 touches. He certainly had 3 or 4 touches on both occasions. And so you see the difference in Haaland. when he's so sharp, when he just gets himself in a good position to only need one or possibly two, then that's when he's at his very best. But when sometimes he holds on to it too long, thinks about it too much, then you can get back and then you can cover him. But when his brain's working at full speed and his decision making is so good, then when he gets the opportunity, then you've just got to pray that somehow he doesn't take it.
As we sit here, Fulham Arsenal hasn't kicked off yet, but the top three is Manchester City on 16, Arsenal on 16, having played a game less, and Liverpool on 15, having played a game less. City are maybe in third gear out of five, probably in second gear. You've spoken about Liverpool not being anywhere near their best. Arsenal aren't in top gear, but they're most people's favourites to win the league right now. How much improvement can City have, the way that you've said about them playing, the lack of pace, compared to how much improvement Liverpool may yet still have?
Oh, wow. I think there's no question. It looks like City's going to be in top four. I really don't see how they don't finish up in the top four. The problem I have with City in terms of the title is I think Liverpool and Arsenal still have so many gears to go through that City don't have. You know, in terms of goal scoring, after Haaland, it really is tough to see where it's coming from. You can't turn around and say that somebody else is off form, because that's just not the case. In terms of Arsenal and Liverpool, they can be so much better. They've got goal scorers around the field, in my opinion. And I think that's what separates Liverpool and Arsenal from City. I think that the fact that City may be in a title race for a part of the season, the only reason that would happen for me is that both Arsenal and Liverpool don't figure it out how to get those extra gears in place and use them. Because I don't think City have got too many gears left. I think they are what they are. They're vulnerable 100% to the counter, but they're vulnerable defensively. I think Donnarumma makes a huge difference for them. He will come up with a save like he did today and die with a snapshot that in the first half that looked as though it was going in, but Donnarumma got his hands to it. And going forward, after Haaland, where's the goal? So yeah, City for me are going to absolutely be a top four side, but I don't see how they are capable of winning the Premier League title with what they've got going forward.
I've noticed an improvement in Everton since David Moyes took over. Obviously today, no Jack Grealish, couldn't play against his parent club, but you've got Garner and Gay in front of Tarkowski and Keane. Beto up front had his chances today. Ndiaye is a brilliant player as well. What's their ceiling? Top half? Is that the aim for Everton? Because I don't think they're going to get relegated. I think they're too good for that right now. Yeah,
I think if they get the top half of the table, then that's success for them. You know, their strength as their organisation, their work rate, you know, they're full of desire. And Ndiaye, if he can stay fit, absolutely is a handful. He certainly the past 12 months for me, he's possibly been Everton's best player. He always creates something for one of his teammates, if not for himself. And so, yeah, they're a good, solid Premier League side, and I think success for them absolutely would be in the top half of the table. They're not winning the Premier League title. They're not getting in the top four. They're not getting in a European place, but they're not being relegated either. And they're not going to be the Everton of what, 3 or 4 years ago, maybe 2, 3, 4 years ago, coming up to the last game of the season, try to hang on. That's not going to happen either.
You spoke about City if they don't have Haaland. I was looking at Everton. They don't score many. They've got 9 goals in 8 games, but they do spread around the goals. They beat Wolves. I think that was the only time in the Premier League this season that they scored 3 goals, 3 different goal scorers. When you see guys like Dewsbury Hall, who scored in that Wolves game, do you see enough in Everton to suggest they're going to score enough goals that can trouble the opposition?
Well, it's not going to be free flowing. Let's put it that way. But you know, up until the first goal today, I wasn't sure whether I wasn't convinced that Man City, even though you've got Haaland in your team, were going to break them down, because there was nothing concrete to suggest that they were going to be broken down. A couple of half chances. Savinho had a couple of half chances. As I said, Doku had a real good half chance. But I wasn't convinced that they were going to be able to break Everton down. And so I would probably say that most sides are going to struggle to break Everton down. And that's the way it has to be for Everton. As you said, they're certainly not free-flowing when it comes to scoring goals. So, they're going to pick points up and pick wins up by, 1-0s or 2-1s at the most, something like that. So they're going to have to be solid defensively. But they pretty much are.
But they lost today by 2-0 to Manchester City. Quick recap of the other games. Obviously, our main focus today was on City against Everton. So the questions will be more generic rather than specific, Stevie. Crystal Palace were 2 goals down against Bournemouth. Mateta got a hat-trick. Had it not been for his late penalty in stoppage time, Bournemouth would have been top of the table, which is a brilliant story. What have you made of the job that Andoni Iraola has done there?
Absolutely incredible. I mean, it's right off the bat, he organised this team and made them better. He made the same players that the previous manager had. He made them better, and then he goes and loses three of his top players, three of his best players. But yet, had they won today, they've been sitting top of the Premier League this season. I mean, that just shows you what a great coach he is, and a smart coach as well. And it's one thing to make players better, but to get them tactically right, and then still able to put them in positions where they can flourish going forward in an attacking sense is remarkable. And quite frankly, I don't imagine that he's going to be at Bournemouth too long. I think as soon as one of the big jobs, i.e. Man United, come along, he has to be somebody that Manchester United have to go to. Instead of going out with the Premier League and bringing a manager in that they have done over the last couple of appointments with coaches that are they're not in tune with the Premier League. I mean, if ever you needed one that's in tune with the Premier League, that can make players better, that can get results, then he's your man, surely, for Manchester United.
You and I have spoken about this before, and you've spoken about it on ESPN FC. The promoted sides in recent years have pretty much always gone straight back down. But one of the successful stories this season, in addition to the likes of Bournemouth, and Palace have been a great story as well, is Sunderland. And for a team that's come up through the playoffs, they're the side right now out of the three promoted teams, winning 2-0 today against Wolves, a late own goal to put the cherry on the cake. They're up to 7th right now. And I remember we spoke about they just have to get their home form sorted. If they can, they'll be, or they hopefully will be okay. And it's a good win. You should be beating the team at the bottom of the table, but Wolves would have fancied that one today.
Yeah, and I think as soon as you mentioned Sunderland, there was a team came straight into my head. I mean, it was some time ago, but Hull City, when they were promoted, I can't even remember, what is it, 10, 15 years ago maybe? Hull City got promoted and were sat at the top of the Premier League.
Phil Brown,
early on. Pardon?
Phil Brown was in
charge.
Phil
Brown was in charge, yeah. The old sitting them in the penalty box and chastising them, all that nonsense. I mean, they were sat top of the Premier League early on in the season, and they did stay up that year, but my goodness, they went on the most incredibly horrible run, and by the skin of their teeth, never got relegated. So if I'm a Sunderland fan or the players, and certainly if I'm the coach, I'm going to remind the players that just because right now we're sitting in a fantastic position, this is a long season, and if you take your eye off the ball and all of a sudden forget your place, then things can go horribly wrong very quickly. So, yeah, they're doing fantastic. I'm sure they're not going to stay up in the heady heights for the whole of the Premier League season. But, yeah, it's a good spot to be in. But be very cautious that the job has only been started. and it's certainly a long way from being finished for Sunderland.
If you said to Burnley boss Scott Parker that the season would end now and Burnley would be 17th, and that's where they are right now after their 2-0 victory over Leeds, he'd take that in a heartbeat. Are we saying that one of the 3 promoted sides is staying up? Are we saying that Burnley could make it 2? Or are we saying that Burnley and Leeds, who Burnley beat today, could make it 3? What do you reckon?
To be honest with you, of all the 3 sides, I think Burnley's got the least chance of staying up. They've won a game today, but, you know, the games I've seen them previously, on 3 occasions, I don't see how they can stay in the Premier League. I don't see them scoring enough goals, and certainly defensively. The question would be, are they good enough to keep clean sheets? And I'm not sure they are. So, yes, they won today. Yes, it's a good victory. But Burnley are of the 3 sides, I think they're the one that absolutely will go down. The other 2 clearly look as though they've got a fighting chance. But yeah, I'm sorry, I'm not sold on Burnley staying up.
Brighton beating Newcastle by 2-1 in the other game that we haven't mentioned yet. Fulham Arsenal still to come. The big one tomorrow, Liverpool against Manchester United. Now, if you were with us earlier when we were talking about Nottingham Forest and Chelsea and the 3-0 win for Chelsea at the City Ground, we broke the story live on air that Nottingham Forest had sacked Ange Postecoglou. Now, since then, and never mind a week being a long time in politics, a couple of hours is a long time in football, we were thinking that Sean Dyche was the favourite. We discussed that. He was odds-on favourite. However, in the last couple of minutes, Stevie, there's a suggestion that Nottingham Forest and Marinakis, their owner, have made a formal approach for Roberto Mancini, and that he and Sean Dyche are both on the wanted list for Nottingham Forest. Out of those 2, who would make more sense?
Sean Dyche. I don't even think it's close. I don't think it's close. You know, you've got a team that was set up a certain way under Nuno that absolutely flourished, and Sean Dyche will set this team up in a similar fashion to what Nuno did. Roberto Mancini isn't going to come in and set a team up the way that Sean Dyche will or Nuno did. So I really don't think this should be close. You know, Marinakis made a decision to open up and play, didn't work. Now he has to go back to the tried and trusted. The success that they had was a certain type of play, and Sean Dyche, for me, is the man that will be able to get this group of players back into that type of play. So Roberto Mancini for the glory of the name, shall we say, and the experience and the resume. But right now, Forest need to get the job done, and that's staying in the Premier League. I don't think Roberto Mancini is a guy that wants to come and take a job just to keep somebody in the league. He wants to play football. He wants to do things. He wants to play a different way, and that's not how Forest need to play right now. So I don't think it should be close. It should be Sean Dyche.
I think you've hit the nail on the head there. The way that Marinakis is, it's the glitz, it's the glamour, it's the Premier League winning coach, it's the name, it's Roberto Mancini. Doesn't have to pay any compensation, not that that would be an issue. His last job was at Saudi Arabia. And it's interesting you talk about that, because it's where Forest were at the start of the season and where Forest are now. And where Forest are now, Sean Dyche makes the most sense. But making sense is not something that Marinakis usually does when he makes decisions, because Postecoglou was just in the wrong movie. Is it potentially dangerous for him to go after the glitz and glamour, as you say, of Roberto Mancini, to think that he can get Forest playing the way that they were playing last season under Nuno again? You think that might be the way that Marinakis thinks, rather than the sensible one here would be Sean Dyche?
Well, I mean, listen, we're not saying that if Sean Dyche comes in, they're going to stay up. You know, right now you can't say that. But I would suggest that the odds of Sean Dyche keeping them up, as opposed to Roberto Mancini, are way higher. if you're looking at Dyche. And right now, Marinakis has to forget about the glamour and the glitz of anything, but think about nuts and bolts, hard work, consistency, the job that needs done. All of those terms that don't exactly excite any fan of any team that does that. But right now, that's what's needed. And if you're looking at those two names, you can guarantee that that's how Sean Dyche is thinking. I'm not sure you can guarantee that's how Roberto Mancini's thinking.
All we need to know now is what Marinakis is thinking, but he keeps his cards close to his chest. My thanks to Stevie Nicol. Earlier today, Chelsea won 3-0 at Forest, who are looking for a new boss. And then Erling Haaland got 2 without doing much else and could have had more. As City, for the time being, are top of the Premier League. Bye for now.